The fall of 2011 carried with it an early chill in northern Oregon. The mountains stood sharp and cold, the forests thick and muffled, their trees hunched like sentinels watching all who entered. For years, hikers and travelers had whispered about the Cascade Trail, a rugged, half-forgotten route that ran miles through dense woodland and shadowed ravines. It wasn't a forbidden trail by any means, just one that locals tended to avoid, citing its reputation for sudden storms, unstable ground, and a string of missing persons. But reputations never stopped people like Mark Holloway. He was 37, a freelance journalist with a taste for risk. He specialized in human interest stories that hovered at the border of tragedy and mystery. Missing hikers, unsolved murders, unexplained accidents. He had come across a thread in an online forum that caught his attention. 4 separate disappearances in the past decade, all connected to the Cascade Trail, all unsolved. Families claimed their loved ones had simply walked off the face of the earth. Mark's intention wasn't to solve anything. He wanted to walk the trail, document it, and write about the psychological effect of traveling a place weighted with so much fear. He believed that people projected superstition onto ordinary tragedies. Someone slips, someone gets lost, panic leads to mistakes, and the forest finishes the job. That was his theory until he stepped into the trees. The Cascade Trail wasted no time disorienting him. The air was still unnaturally so, as though the wind had been cut off at the tree line. Shadows stretched longer than they should have, even at midday, and the silence pressed against his ears. Mark filmed short clips on his camera, narrating his thoughts, remarking on the odd quiet. His footage showed nothing out of place, just trees, rocks, and brush. Yet as he replayed the clips that night in his tent, he noticed something peculiar. Between his words and the silence, a faint sound bled through like the muffled rhythm of footsteps trailing his own. He dismissed it as an audio glitch. On the 3rd day, he found the first marker of the trail's history. Deep in a ravine, lodged between rocks, was a hiking boot caked in moss. Inside, still intact, were the brittle remains of toes. It matched a missing person case from 2004, a man named Elias Rowe who had vanished during a solo hike. The authorities had searched for him for weeks, never finding so much as a scrap of clothing. Yet here was his boot, placed almost deliberately in a hollow where the elements could not touch it. Mark filmed it, voice shaking, but steady enough to feign professionalism. That night he dreamed vividly. In his sleep, he stood in a clearing of the forest, moonlight spilling between skeletal branches. Figures surrounded him, half hidden in the dark, pale and hollow-eyed. They said nothing, they only stared, their outlines flickering as if unstable. When he awoke, the walls of his tent seemed to tremble. Outside, branches snapped under invisible weight. He did not open the zipper to look. By the 5th day, Mark's confidence frayed. His recordings became erratic, his voice tight with unease. He spoke less about the psychology of fear and more about the presence he felt behind him. He admitted to his camera that he had seen someone on the trail. Not directly, but in glimpses, flashes of movement between the trees. A figure keeping perfect pace. He began to question whether he was being followed by a person or by something the forest itself produced. On the 7th day, he found the second marker. This time it was a backpack, sun-bleached and half-buried in soil. It belonged to a missing teenager named Vanessa Clark, who had vanished on a summer hike in 2008. Inside were her belongings: a cracked cell phone, half-empty bottle of water, a journal that ended mid-sentence. "He is behind me. I think he has been since the words broke off there." The pages that followed were blank. Mark's journal mirrored hers in a way that unsettled him. His own entries had become fragmented, peppered with the word behind. The awareness of something trailing him was no longer subtle. It had become constant, oppressive. He wrote that every time he turned suddenly, he caught the edge of something vanishing, shoulders slipping behind trunks, a face melting into shadow. The last footage Mark recorded was fragmented and disturbing. In it, he was visibly thinner, unshaven, eyes darting. He whispered that he had found a clearing filled with strange wooden structures, branches lashed together into crude shapes, resembling human forms. At the center was a circle of stones, blackened as though from old fires. He muttered that he recognized clothing scraps tangled in the branches, shirts, jackets, torn fabric that matched reports from missing hikers. He said he was leaving immediately, that he could feel them circling. The footage ended mid-sentence. Weeks later, search teams were dispatched. After Mark failed to check in with his editor, they found his campsite abandoned, tent slashed open, gear scattered. His camera lay in the dirt, battery drained, containing the fragments of his journey. They also found his notebook, water-stained but legible. The last entry read simply, "I am not alone." Mark Holloway was never recovered. His case joined the list of vanishings tied to the Cascade Trail. Authorities released a cautious statement about environmental hazards and mental strain leading to his disappearance. But among locals, the story solidified the trail's reputation as cursed. Some say the forest itself keeps what it takes. Others believe something watches the paths, luring the curious deeper, feeding on the very act of being noticed. The Cascade Trail remains open today, though it carries a warning at the ranger station. Travel with caution, stay on marked paths, do not hike alone. Few obey and fewer return unchanged. And for those who dare, the question lingers. When you walk the Cascade Trail and hear footsteps in the silence, are they your own echo or someone else's, pacing you step for step, waiting for the moment you look away?